Hey guys, this is Tezlyn Figaro, your chief political correspondent. I am sitting here with one of your favorites that we have in Congress. So glad to have her here, Representative Jasmine Crockett, representing the 30th Congressional District in the great state of Texas.
Yeah.
I'm glad to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
You know, people see a lot of your clips online. They see that. Would you like to recite? Can we just put that out on the table, or what you made famous on the clapback? First of all, I am a fan of clapbacks. I'm a fan of what they call playing the dozens, jonesing.
Yes.
Like that was so important. So many people were rooting for that. So can you just refresh
I got you.
the audience on?
Yes, for the bleach, blind, bad, built, butch bodies out there. Yes.
Oh my God, people were rooting for that. You know, for so long, we always say, fight back, Democrats.
Yeah.
Don't just allow, the insults to go unchallenged. Every now and then, people want to see a couple of, a couple of punches landed. So as you saw, that went viral.
It did.
But there was also, a lot of criticism with that as well. So I wanted to get kind of right into that.
Yeah.
On receiving all of that attention and you being so strong and vocal and straightforward, and how has that been in the stereotypes with that?
It's been weird. So there's a couple of things with this. I am always the same no matter where I am. And when you're sitting in the halls of Congress or in a chamber, you've got so many cameras that are on you. With social media and everything else, things can just blow up and go on another level. And so I'm so very recognizable now, whereas before I wasn't really as recognizable. So it can be a lot because you never know, especially when you're in a place like Texas or in Georgia, who recognizes you and loves you and who recognizes you and dislikes you.
Right.
And so the safety concerns is a really big thing. We end up with death threats all the time. So that's a part of it. The better part of this is the number of women, specifically women of color, that felt empowered in that moment. And so, to have me and Marjorie, if at this point in time, we absolutely are equals, we serve on the same level. And the idea or the audacity that she feels as if she can talk to me, to talk to me any way that she wants to, and to be in this environment where the chair refused to enforce the rules, but was going to allow her to disrespect me. I wasn't going to sit there. And I think that it's hard for people to believe that you will be their fighter, that you will fight for sometimes their lives, if you're not going to sit there and fight for yourself. So I'm like, listen, I didn't take this job to get, number one, a pay cut and to be disrespected. Like, I'm not going to do that. And it's interesting because for me, it was like, this is just what it is.
Right.
And there are those that I think would not have done what I did for fear of, oh my gosh, I may not get reelected.
Right.
And I don't do things out of this kind of fear of whether or not I'll be reelected, because this seat doesn't belong to me. It's always belonged to the people. So for me, I'm like, I have to govern the way that I feel like I am supposed to represent for my district. If my district doesn't like it, it is their right to kick me out. But one thing I'm not going to do is sit there and just be walked all over to say that I have a title. Like, I'm just not that type of person.
And some things just need to get said. You want to go there, let's go there. And again, I think the response that you got, people have been waiting for that because you've watched Trump do that. You've watched him insult. And speaking of that kind of transitions on what we saw with NABJ, National Association of Black Journalists. Trump showed up and said, I'm going to sit here and disrespect you all to your face.
In your face.
And nobody's going to challenge it. And when I mean challenge, I'm not talking about challenge it with facts and challenge it with policy. No, I'm talking about them insults. Like every now and then, you want to see somebody spar. You want to see somebody squabble. And so I think people appreciated that from you to say, oh, no, because your middle name is Felicia. So they had to, it ain't just Jasmine. Felicia is also here, and it won't be by Felicia.
That's right.
It's hello, Felicia's here, and let's go ahead and do this.
Right.
And so I certainly appreciate it because I think it's necessary. Don't get it confused.
It's across the board.
Yeah.
And I think initially Marjorie thought, oh, well, the blacks, like the black folk may be down with this. But no, there's a lot of people that don't like you, sis. Right? And so, like, of all races, of all ages, because she's nothing more than a bully. She's not a public servant. This isn't someone who has this record of pushing forward with legislation that is going to better people's lives. This is somebody that consistently tries to tear us down from within. She's not trying to do the job that we were elected to do. And so all she does does is play in our face. And it's the same thing with Trump. I mean, Trump is her hero. She follows after him. She is the one that consistently goes out, calls people out of their name, and bullies people. The difference is when you knock a bully back,
that's right,
they'll shut up.
That's
because
right.
like she legitimately didn't show up to committee for about a month from that point, at least while I was in the committee room. She didn't even show up, right? And so we really don't even see each other because like she don't want that smoke.
I know that's
And
right.
so for people that were like, oh, we just don't feel like you should have done this and that or whatever, which I quieted all of them down. But the people that really felt a little way about it, it's like, no, you know what? I stopped her in her tracks. Now, I still don't think she learned her lesson. I don't think that she's like, oh, what I did was wrong because, you know, of course she's black.
But you're going to watch your tone, though,
exactly.
moving forward.
That's exactly right.
And that's what
exactly
it's all about.
Right.
So now you are a surrogate for Vice President Harris's campaign.
Yeah.
Tell us about, because this happened really, really fast. So we do see some momentum now. We see the energy. We see the excitement. Talk a little bit about, though, how that momentum has to actually translate into actual votes. And how can that be done?
As you can see, a lot of the hardcore Biden folk, which I was a hardcore Biden person, I am a hardcore VP Harris person. The reality is that I've always been closer with the vice president than I've been with the president. You know, in my mind, we have this very special relationship. I don't know that she believes it either, but in my mind, it really is this beautiful story that I believe the two of us share in various experiences. And even you brought up B6, she called me after that, and she called me to check on me. So the question that you're posing almost in real time, she was calling to check on me because she understands that while there were a lot of people that really were rooting for that moment, that there would be a lot of hate that came my way.
Right.
And there's very few black women that are in politics at this level that can really understand what you're going through.
Right.
And so to me, it just means a lot just so that people understand who she is. She is the most powerful black woman in the world. And for her to say things like, let me take time out and call and check in on this freshman and pour into her, you know, this woman has been pouring into me almost since day one that I got there. So I get teary-eyed just thinking about her because she really, once the story comes out about my evolution, it'll be clear the major impact that she's had on me as a federal lawmaker. So with that, I absolutely had lots of angst for a lot of different reasons. And frankly, she's running on the same record as Joe Biden. So, you know, I would tell people when I was on the trail, if you want Kamala, she on the ticket, vote for Kamala, right? Like, I mean, I was telling people, in fact, I told Charlamagne that. So I was trying to make it clear, and I felt like I was making inroads. But, you know, unfortunately, Democrats got to be jazzed up to do something, right? And it has been historic in and of itself. The fact that, number one, she ended up raising so much money, ended up consolidating so much support. And in record time, we got her as the nominee really quickly as well. And now she's the first black woman nominated to a major party. And so that's great. But what I need people to understand is, number one, stop calling me talking about an inauguration. Stop it.
Right.
You know, I'm getting I'm getting all the text messages like, how do we get to inauguration?
How do we get tickets?
Yeah, and I'm like,
party
you get to the donate button, you get to the doors. Like, we have work to do. So I don't want people to mistake excitement for a win.
Right.
Excitement is like the first base. When I'm looking at an election, we got to get all the way home. We are just at first base. So people are like, well, we don't know her. We don't know her.
Right.
So now we're in the get to know you phase. But we kind of doing speed dating. So do I like her enough that I'm going to take her home to my mama?
Right.
Right? Like, we've got to get all the way there, because taking her home to your mama means that you will stand in that line, whether it's hot outside, whether it's cold outside, whether it's raining, you understand your assignments. And not only will you stand in line, but you will go and get somebody else. You will drag other people. You will make sure your children are registered. You will make sure those mail-in ballots are coming in. Like, you will understand that your voice matters way more than any elected official. Like, people are tired of politicians. Like, they don't want to hear from politicians. It's one of the reasons that I probably resonate a little bit, because I don't sound like a politician. Right? But like, you will trust your coworker, your line sister, your line brother, your cousins, your aunties, your uncles, before you trust a politician. And so that's why I'm telling people, you need to get into your group chats. You need to tell them that there's no such thing as a perfect party nor a perfect politician. But what we can have is a more perfect union. And what does that look like? That looks like you looking out for somebody who's looking out for you. This ain't about Kamala. Just like it was never about Joe. This has to be about you. If y'all don't find it in your heart to be very selfish with your vote and say, you know what? I am voting because I'm looking out for myself. I am voting because I'm looking out for my children and my grandchildren. That is what your vote is about, not to mention your ancestors that made it possible for you to raise your voice and actually participate. This is about you not sitting on the sidelines as all your freedoms are stripped away from you in your face, and they say, oh, well, you didn't do your part, right? Like, we don't have the reproductive access, or I don't have the reproductive access that my mama had. There's a problem with that. When it comes down to the Fearless Fund and the fact that you had Black women that decided that they were going to have the audacity to go ahead and fund Black women, and you have forces that are like, we got a problem with that. Well, y'all ain't had a problem in all these decades that you, first of all, built this country on the backs of my people and profited off of us. And then you went and had the audacity to give all the money in the world to people like Trump, who wasn't doing nothing but perpetrating a fraud, when you have other people that can't get $5 and you out here giving him millions while he's perpetrating a fraud on you. Like, it is infuriating that they're now saying, you know what, y'all don't deserve to be in certain schools, so we want to get rid of affirmative action. But it wasn't just about the education piece. What they decided to do was start with the education piece, but what we see them doing is now getting into contracting, right? We know that we've never gotten our fair share when it came to minority contracts with the government, whether it was the federal government or the state governments. They are using that legalese in a way that they're trying to say, well, you know what? Because of this precedence, we think that this may be a problem too. They're going after us economically.
I want to get back to something, Congresswoman, because reproductive rights, you mentioned it, but I want to go back to that because that's one of the things online that people really don't understand what's involved in reproductive rights. It is not just about abortion, because even when you look at abortion as an issue for Black women, it's usually around 6 or 7. It's not our top issue. And so when I'm having these conversations like, oh, you just keep worrying about killing Black babies, let's talk about reproductive rights so that people can understand even what that means, particularly women, Black women who suffer with fibroids, and how I don't think a lot of people understand that we get birth control just to help with fibroid pain, just to be able to have, ease our bodies. Talk a little bit about reproductive rights and how it is far more than just abortion. And for women who want to have children when you talk about IVF.
So a couple of things. So Project 2025 wants to go a step further than where we are. Project 2025 wants to go after our birth control as well. And we saw that they've already done the court case on mifepristone, which is for abortion. But also, what people don't understand is mifepristone is also for miscarriages. And so, first of all, if you don't fully understand reproductive health, you just need to vote with the people that are saying this is what we need, to be perfectly honest, because when it comes down to it, you've got people with ectopic pregnancies. You've got people with fibroids that need issues. Even there are young girls that end up having such bad periods that they have decided that this is what is needed to help ease their pain. And so there's so many layers that go into it. I remember one time I got a text message from one of my best friends, and she had found out she was pregnant maybe about 3 weeks prior to. And we were so excited. On this particular day, because she wears an Apple Watch, she was talking about there's something wrong, like my heartbeat is just like out of control. And so I'm like, all right, well, you need to go to the doctor. So she goes to like urgent care, and urgent care tells her, yo, like you're gonna die. if you continue to carry. There were complications. And so they were like, but you need to go to your primary doctor. She went to her primary doctor, and the primary doctor was like, there's a 50-50 chance. And the primary doctor was like, listen, if you carry and the 50% chance you end up dying, so does your child, because you've got to carry the child. Being from Texas, we've dealt with the women who literally may not be able to carry children because of the extreme laws now that have made it to where they about had to die. They've become septic. There's just so many layers. And then you brought up the IVF. You know, those that are trying to have children, but because of the way that they want to define what a child is and when life begins, you're not allowed to go through the only way that you may be able to go through bringing a child forth into this world. So it is important that we understand that this isn't about whether or not you have a uterus. It's about respecting and understanding those that do have uteri and deciding that you are going to allow them the autonomy that they deserve, because that's real freedom, whether we're talking about the economic side of this or whether we're talking about whether or not they're going to live. I need people to understand that if you allow for this to go forth, where does it stop? I mean, what's to keep somebody from going after you and telling you what you can and can't do with cancer? What's to keep them from telling you what you can and can't do with your male reproductive parts? So don't think that this is about just us. You need to recognize that you may be on the chopping block next. And so it's important that you stand with those that are fighting for this freedom, even if you don't agree with it, because it's not about whether or not you agree with reproductive access in general or abortion. It's about whether or not you believe that I should have bodily autonomy, because if mine goes away, there's nothing that says that yours can't go away.
I want to ask you about Project 2025, because you make the case on that all the time. But before I do that, I want to circle back. Okay. You got teary-eyed when you said how VP Harris has reached out to you. Yeah. Explain that a little bit more. Like, why does that touch you? But, I don't think people get a chance to see that softer side. You know, they see us so strong, and so I just really want to know, like, why. Because I'm looking at tears in your eyes, literally. No, so I want to know more about that.
If people only knew her, I feel so honored and privileged. So a couple of things. When I first got to Congress, I really didn't know if I made the right decision. I actually was second guessing my decision to run. And it's definitely a first world problem to feel that way, because I'm one of less than 60 Black women to ever have the honor and privilege of.
This is after you won?
This is after I won.
What was that? What made you say, I don't know if this is it?
I went into oversight, the committee where you get all the crazy videos from.
Okay.
It was not a committee that I chose. I didn't get my first nor my second choice for committees. And it was just such an ugly committee. And I really didn't know how to deal with it, because I came to Congress hoping to really do the things that need to be done in my district. 20% live at or below poverty. I got real things that I need to do to like help my people. So it was very frustrating and upsetting, because it's like I'm taking, you know, a trip that's closer to 3 hours than the 30 minutes that I used to take when I went to the State House. I love practicing law. I'm not allowed to practice law. I'm spending so much time here. Like, I was just giving up so much, and I didn't really feel like I was really getting anything in return. And I just didn't know if this was really where I wanted to be. So it was about a month in, and the vice president invited the Black Caucus to the vice president's residence. And there I was with so many of my colleagues, and they could not sense or see that I was struggling. They couldn't, and that's fine. But we always do picture lines. No matter where you are, there's always a picture line. And so I get into the picture line and take a picture with the vice president. So that means there's a whole bunch of people behind me. And she looks at me and she said, "What's wrong?" And this isn't somebody that I have like some relationship with. But the fact that she could see me, it blew my mind. And every time I think about it, it just makes me freak out a little bit. And so I told her, I said, I don't know that this is where I belong. Like, I don't know that this is what I want to do. And she had a staffer grab a tissue, and she's wiping my eyes, and she's telling me that I'm exactly where God wants me and that I'm supposed to be there. And I've got all the credentials in the world. Just do the work, because my district trusted me to get it done. And so she, it didn't matter that all these other people that are more senior than me were standing in line. She took time with me. That has been our relationship ever since. And so it was before any of the viral moments ever happened. But once she poured into me, I stood on business and said, you know what? Okay. And it was almost like she gave me my superpowers.
So kind of like, since you're a Christian, Moses and Aaron.
Yeah.
You know, when Moses was confused and he didn't know, am I supposed to be? And the Lord said, what? I'm going to send you a communicator.
Yeah.
So it was that moment.
Yeah.
I be talking to God all the time. So I feel you. So I'll be like, are you sure? Are you positively sure this is where you want to be? And sometimes it may be that person. For me, it was a lady in church. She just stopped me out of nowhere and said, God told me to pray for you. And that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about Project 2025. I know you don't have a lot of time, but you've made the case on that. We hear a lot online that it's a scare tactic. I tell people all the time it's a strategy. So tell us about that and what people should be concerned about on Project 2025, and why you've been one of the first ones, that at least that I saw, that have really been pushing this and making this case.
If I had to summarize the point of it is the white racist agenda to make sure that this minority that they are ends up ruling forever over the majority of us. This is our first census in which the Anglo population did not grow. And so we are becoming more and more colorful. And that is why it is so important to consolidate power. So, for instance, it goes after elderly folk. They want to get rid of Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. It goes after anyone that is not rich, to be perfectly honest, right? They want to make sure that they continue on with the Trump tax cuts that expire in 2025. They want to make sure the top is getting to save more money, but the people at the bottom, the people that are struggling, the middle class, continue to struggle and struggle even more. They want to make sure that they're doing things such as getting rid of the Department of Education. They're trying to take our money and put it not just, we went from public education to public charter to now them even trying to take our monies and put it into private schools. It's saying Department of Justice, you know what, we don't want you to have any independence. There's currently at least some, because we see the sitting president's son has been convicted. Well, what it would do is consolidate power so that the executor can go after his enemies and things like that. And that's always been separated out. So, it is a very scary document, but the reality is that it's been underway. When we look at the laws that were coming through the state houses, it was the Heritage Foundation that was dropping off bills to state houses such as mine. They dropped off what they called the heartbeat bill. This is the 6-week ban that we saw in Texas, that we saw in Florida, that we see in Iowa, and all in Georgia. It all comes from the Heritage Foundation. They've been working on this. Mm-hmm. We had this whole wave on CRT. CRT is nothing like what they said it was, right? But essentially what they did is they decided they did not want Black history taught. That is a part of Project 2025. So they named it CRT. They started dropping the bills in the state houses, and that's why we're seeing the book bans. All of this craziness, all of the relics from the past, from the Jim Crow era, that's essentially what they're trying to bring forth, is take us back to Jim Crow, which is why you hear the vice president emphatically saying over and over, we will not go back.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that, there's been a lot of questions around VP Harris's blackness. We wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, because she just turned black.
Yeah, she just turned black, according to former President Trump, who said it in front of, again, NABJ.
A bunch of Black folks.
A bunch of Black folks. Tell us about that. Where is that coming from? Because it's not just President Trump, let's be honest. I've seen a lot of folks who question it, who make videos about it, who say, what is that about?
It's interesting, because one thing that I think Trump is really good at doing is making sure that he employs the tactics that were used during slavery, right? Like, so long as you keep us separated and we're not united, then you can better control. And that's what they did during slavery. So just like, you know, there used to be issues with color, and we still have issues with color, right? This kind of comes down to a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. You know, there's always been a challenge of your blackness if for some reason you weren't, say, my color or darker, mm-hmm. right? And so that's what she's experiencing. But we've all known forever, if you got a drop of black blood, mm-hmm. that the rule has always been you were black, because she can't hide it. You can look at her, you can tell that she is black. And so, you know, he wants to rile people up with that nonsense.
We know she's not white. I tell people that one thing for sure, we can all agree that she's definitely not a white woman.
But she's black. Yeah. Y'all need to go look at her daddy. She is black, mm-hmm. like, end of story. But why are we wasting our time talking about that? Because mm-hmm. does it really matter if she's black, white, Asian, Hispanic? I don't really care. What I care about is what types of policies are you trying to deliver for me and mine? That should be the question. That should be the conversation. And so long as Trump throws out all these distractions, that's telling you that he does not have a plan to help you if you're struggling with your grocery store bill, if you're struggling with your gas bill, if you're struggling with making enough money on your job. He doesn't have a plan for that. So instead, he's going to distract you with all this other nonsense.
A lot of black men feel left out of this process, you know, because we talk about black girl magic and we talk about black women being the backbone of the Democrat Party. Mm-hmm. And President Trump has talked about, and this is one of my issues is always going to be mass incarceration, mm-hmm. police brutality, mm-hmm. has talked about, you know, immunity for all police the stop and frisk. Yes. Tie that into Project 2025, because a lot of these things, Congresswoman, it's going to go over, it's not identifying, and this is just it's not hitting home enough. And so I've just really been trying to talk to people about, when you look at Sonia Macy, mm-hmm. who we just organized for last week, woman mm-hmm. shot in her face. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about how that falls into Project 2025, and what should black men be paying attention to. If you don't like VP Harris, fine. You don't like Joe Biden, fine. If you like, what should they pay attention on Project 2025 when it comes to that?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, there's a couple of things. So, number one, Trump specifically has said that he wants them to have immunity, them being police officers. That's why when he was at NABJ, he was asked about it. Because when he goes to his rallies that are lily white and have a few random black folk that I argue are probably paid to be there, this is what he said, but he doesn't really want to talk about it in depth when he is asked about it. And nobody on Fox News is going to ask him these questions. That's just the reality. So my question is, if you do care about criminal justice in this country, which I think if you're a person of color, you have to care, because we have all either experienced incarceration or we know somebody that's experienced incarceration. And some of the times it's been very questionable about their incarceration. Not to mention, you know, it's just like we talk about as black folk having the talk with our children.
Right.
So when you can see that a mother has called into law enforcement, has explained her mental health situation, has said, please don't send anybody who is prejudiced, because she understands what can happen to her child. And then even with all the warnings that were made on that 911 call, they go in, they send somebody who never should have been employed in the first place. And what does he do? He shoots her in her face. He shoots her in her head. And for him to say, well, I don't really know about that case. Well, wait a minute. Well, was it the water?
Right.
Like, seriously?
Right.
Like, this is a guy that you would consider employing to this position as we are still struggling with police brutality in this country. It is just astounding to me, because you don't have to trust what I say. Go and listen to him. This is what he has pushed. And when we look at things like the George Floyd and Policing and Justice Act, we tried to get that over the hump. It came out of the House when the Democrats controlled the House. But you know what? You couldn't find a Republican senator to get on board to make sure that we could get it passed. Our lives are not valued. So, like, I wish we could have real conversations around policy, but for some reason, we keep getting distracted because the policies don't align. Like, if you literally didn't put up the faces of who said what, and you just put the policies up,
right,
I can guarantee you they would vote for Kamala Harris in a heartbeat because they don't agree with his policies. And if we focus on the policies, we can start to move the needle. You know, you and I were talking a little bit earlier about Sheila Jackson Lee. Sheila Jackson Lee just died. But when I tell you that that woman filed for reparations over and over and over and over, when I tell you that she filed to get Juneteenth over and over and over until it happens, I need us to just start having real conversations with everybody that's trying to get your vote, whether they're black, white, or otherwise. You need to talk to them about what are the policies that you're pushing forward with and how will that affect my life. And when it comes to criminal justice, I'm sorry. I know a lot of people talk about how Trump was letting people out of prison. He was letting people out of prison because he was trying to get his homies out. Like, that's what that was. He wasn't necessarily saying, well, this is going to help the black ones, right? Like, he was out there trying to change it up because so many of his people have been arrested. So yeah, there were people that got out of prison. No one is talking about the fact that President Biden decided that those people that had felony convictions on the federal level for marijuana, that he was going to make sure that they got out of prison or that their records were cleared, because that is important.
But let me ask you this, when you say nobody, do you think that's some of the fault of the Democrat Party? Because, again, Governor Westmore, over 170,000 pardons with marijuana, and people don't talk about it. So when we say nobody talking about it, I would beg to argue that a lot of that is on the Democrat side. When you say the First Step Act that President Trump pushed, it's a lot of people, because of the way that was marketed. I know a lot of homies that benefited from that. Yeah. And so when I say, why are they not talking about what Governor Newsom is doing in California? Yeah. Why are they not talking about how he's taken the gang enhancement off that has allowed people to cut their time in half? Honestly, Representative, I don't know if Democrats have really lived up to, when you say nobody's talking about, like, who is the nobody? Could Democrats do better in their messaging?
Okay, so I feel you. I hear you. I hear you. No, I absolutely do believe that we have to do better. It's one of the things that I've pushed for. I've pushed for us to start talking in sound bites instead of talking in manuscripts, because that's something the Democrats do. And also, until you really start to talk to, like, the people and you get out of the
and
DC
not just
bubble,
online.
Yeah, you got to get out of the bubble and really understand what moves the needle with different people. So we did a panel. For some reason, they had me moderate down in New Orleans at Essence, and it was all about black men. And so every panelist was a black man. And I wanted to know. I was like, real talk, y'all have a captive audience? Tell us what your peers are saying. And they all were from different kind of walks of life. Criminal justice and economic opportunities.
Right.
Those were the two things. And I'm like, all right, well, y'all know everybody was getting PPP loans. Y'all know, I'm like, everybody knows somebody got in trouble with a PPP loan. I'm like, they loosened the reins and opened up the money under this administration. But no one really thought of, in fact, one of the guys said, well, wasn't that Trump? And we were like, no, actually it wasn't. It was the Biden-Harris administration. So we're not having the conversations that I think would move the needle with black men. Number one, being upfront about what has been done on criminal justice. But this is why it matters to have us in position, because we are doing the work. When you have somebody like a Westmore who understands, he knows the difference that it's going to make in people's lives. And he went out unapologetically and decided that I am in position in Maryland and this is what I'm going to do. And so I just want us to really have more conversations about policy and stop getting caught up in things like, you know, what we're gonna deal with, you know, the VP. Well, she's a prosecutor. All right. Well, there are certain prosecutors that we would prefer to have. Like, it's a real job that somebody's gotta do. But like, we've had prosecutors that have overstepped and we've had prosecutors that have saved. I'm telling you right now, she was one of those that did the saving instead of the overstepping, right? And so, you know, I need people to talk about the policies and get off of kind of like the misnomers about, well, if it's a prosecutor, then it's bad.
Yeah, I also think there needs to be more opportunities to do that. You know, you and I were talking about that before, black media and black organizers too. Yeah. Like, it's not just a matter of just going on a radio show every now and then. Like, get on the ground and have these conversations. So we are in Georgia. That is a swing state, as you know, a must-have state. Black people delivered it in the last midterms. Former President Trump is meeting with black men to talk about economics. What are a couple of things that black men should know about economics and the Biden-Harris administration?
I want people to ask real questions. If Trump is going to come in and sit down and talk to folk about what it looks like economically, then talk about why the black wealth gap has actually been closing under the Biden-Harris administration and it wasn't under his. Talk about why black unemployment is actually at a low that he never hit under his administration. We deal in a multi-trillion dollar, not billion, not million, but multi-trillion dollar budget. The question is, when we end up sending our taxes up, who is it that's deciding where that money is going to come back down to and how it's coming down? We know that white folk continue to eat off of our tax dollars because when it comes to contracting with the federal government, they're getting the money. My question to them should be, you should be asking Trump, what is it that you specifically are going to do to make sure that the inequities that we've seen as it relates to our minority businesses, that we're starting to get some of those contracts so that we can start to bring our communities out of poverty as well, or bring them from the middle class and take them to the next level. And those are the questions he won't have answers for. This ain't about softballs and feel goods. This is about our future and whether or not we will have one. So they should be asking real questions instead of just trying to be in the room and hopefully cozying up to who they think will be the next president and hoping that he will throw them a crumb or two. You should be trying to figure out how not only you can eat, but the rest of your community can eat, because that's what it looks like to be a leader in your community.
Before you go, will there be a debate between VP Harris and Donald Trump? Is he scared? Is he never scared? Well, like, what's going on? Is he playing a game?
I think
like,
he's
what
scared.
is it?
I don't think he's going to do it. I mean, if somebody said, hey, will you go debate Joe Biden again? He would say, yep, absolutely.
Right.
But I think that, you know, the fact that it's another black woman prosecutor on the other side of him, every time he has to see one of them, it don't go too well for him. I just don't believe that he really wants that smoke. So I don't think it's going to happen.
We just want to ask you quickly, what are the 3 most important things that black people need to know about this election, and 3 things they can do between now and November?
1, they need to vote. But do your research. Like, I don't want you I do want you to trust me, but it's always trust but verify.
Right.
Right? And so verify anything that I've said. Verify anything that anybody is saying to you, whether it's online, on TikTok, or wherever else. I need you to empower yourself with the education, because y'all have more access than we ever had back in the day. So definitely make sure you get your education. We know that right now this administration invested a historic amount of money in HBCUs. This is what it looks like to say, I'm investing in black folk. When you invest $14 to $16 billion, and no other administration went over $253 million, right? Like, what does it look like to say that we are closing the black wealth gap? It looks like the student loan forgiveness that took place, where it was $147 billion for over 4 million people that has been relieved. The most that I've heard as I've been out when I was at Essence on a stage is somebody told me they had $270,000 taken off their back. Just imagine what you could do if you got $270,000 worth of debt off of you. That means that you can go buy that home and start to build that generational wealth, or put money into getting a business. The opportunities are limitless. So don't let people tell you that nothing was done for black people in this administration. It absolutely mattered that there was not only a black woman at the table, but a HBCU grad at the table. And again, as we talk about black farmers and the $2 billion that they are about to get, like, this has been historic stuff, specifically targeting black folk. And it's what we deserve. We deserve a government that will work for us. So I want to make sure that you, number 1, educate yourself. Number 2, that you get out and vote. And number 3, that you take somebody else with you. Because if we don't, I really don't know how much worse this will get for all of us. But I can guarantee you that it will get worse.
I want to thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you opening up and showing your vulnerable side and letting us know a little bit more about you, and you know, the connection that you have with Vice President Harris. I think, and I also appreciate your transparency, saying there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. There's not, the Democrat Party is not perfect. This government is not perfect. There's more work to be done, but it does matter who's at the table.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.